Hello, my name is John Mugno, and I will be the host today for the Rye Brook Focus discussion with Chief Kenny Barton of the Portchester Rye Brook EMS. This is the group that provides medical care and transportation when you call 911. Welcome, Chief Barton. Chief
Thank you, Mr.
Barton, maybe
Mugno.
you could give us a little about your background before we get into the questions about the organization.
Okay, so I've been in emergency medical services since 1991. So this is my 34th year. I started as a volunteer at my local agency up in Cold Spring. I got my EMT certification, and a couple years after that, became a paramedic. I've been practicing that since 1997, so 28 years as a paramedic. And I joined Portchester EMS in 2011. I was a lieutenant for about a decade, and then I took over as the chief of the department in March of 2022.
Okay, so a great deal of experience. Well, let's start with a little history and the formation of the PCRRB EMS. I understand that the forerunner of the current EMS program began operations in 1968 as the Portchester Volunteer Ambulance Corps, and it became the current PCRRB EMS in 2019. Was there another operating EMS in the area prior to the Portchester one's formation?
So prior to 1968, the communities here, which at the time were City of Rye, Village of Portchester, and Rye Town,
Right.
um, were the only ambulance service that was available back then was from the city of White Plains. So if there was an emergency that did need an ambulance to bring someone to the hospital, it came from the city of White Plains, and obviously with a pretty lengthy response time to get to people in need.
Oh, so this was really an important addition to the medical services in the area.
Very much so.
Well, I understand that it operates here with the three municipalities and it functions as a shared service. Can you explain to our listeners what the implications of a shared service are?
Yeah, our service actually is really a very successful model of delivery through for the entire state. It's a unique model with the fact that there's cooperation currently between two villages in a city. That's not sort of the typical flavor that you would find in some of these cooperative agreements, but from the model standpoint, it allows a tremendous amount of efficiency with our delivery of care. Instead of each municipality having to have a building for their ambulance service to turn out of and vehicles and equipment, we turn out of our headquarters in Portchester, which is very central to the three municipalities. And we're able to do it with far less manpower and vehicle power than would be needed if we were providing it independently to each.
Ah, yeah, I can see how that would be a more efficient structure, given how close the communities are and the population of the various communities. What services does the EMS provide?
So our primary objective is obviously that we are the 911 service provider for these three municipalities. Um, we do some non-emergency transportation. That's usually from our skilled nursing facilities. Going to the hospital with certain needs. Basically, if a patient uh, if moving a patient requires an ambulance stretcher, generally we'll get involved on the non-emergent side as well. But our primary service objective is the delivery of the 911 care to the three municipalities.
Okay. And how large of a staff do you have?
So currently, we have there's a total of just over 40 paid staff members currently that are employed by the agency. That's a combination of full-time, part-time, per diem, and the administrative and office staff. Um, Every one of the agency is trained to at least the EMT level or higher as far as their education level. So everything is in our communities is provided at an advanced life support capability.
Oh, good. That's so we'll get to that because that sounds like it's an important thing too. But what the staff, I understand, are either EMTs or paramedics. What's the difference and what does that mean about the services they could provide?
So EMTs, that's sort of the basic level of care that is credentialed in New York State. An emergency medical technician course is somewhere 160 to 180 hours of training time. EMTs are trained in hemorrhage control, fracture management, spinal immobilization, certainly CPR, AED operation, as well as fracture management, oxygen delivery. There is a very small number of medications that are now able to be delivered by our basic life support providers, which are the EMTs. And they also do, airway management and patient assessment is probably the biggest skill.
Hmm.
Uh, paramedics is Paramedic is a big step up as far as the education level beyond the EMT training. So a typical paramedic course is in the area of 1,000 to 1,200 hours of training. So almost 8 to 10 times more class time and field time as an EMT when they're trained. Paramedics get trained in addition to the regular scope of care that's in the EMT. At the EMT level, they're able to do advanced airway management. So we actually will put intubation tubes in if somebody is having extreme difficulty or is not breathing. Um, we Paramedics are able to do IV access, fluid administration, carry a formulary of about 30 pre-hospital medications, including cardiac medications, medications for allergic reactions, and other emergent situations there. An advanced skill set as far as trauma management is also with the paramedics, and probably the biggest thing is cardiology. Paramedics are trained to interpret EKGs so that we understand what's happening with the patient's heart if they're in any kind of cardiac crisis.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I understand those are fairly advanced medical treatments from the paramedic, but they also have to undergo recertification periodically. So there's ongoing training all the time.
That's correct. So the
Hmm.
certification period for both EMTs and paramedics is 4 years. So during that 4 year cycle, all of our providers are in a continuing education program where they have to meet a certain number of hours in sort of each category of our disciplines in order to satisfy the requirement for renewal of their certification. Additionally, paramedics have to attend what's called call audits, where they review actual EMS calls with a physician to get an understanding of whether or not care was appropriate, if there was things that could have been improved upon, and you sort of get the outcome, the ultimate outcome for the patient, which is very useful information to apply going forward to the next person.
Okay. Now let's go to some operational details. What equipment does the EMS have? I mean, I'm thinking vehicles here, and then right, rather
So
than everything
we
that's in them.
we have a fleet of 7 ambulances to service the communities. Typically, our staffing is daytime hours. We have 3 in-service ambulances that are staffed with an EMT and a paramedic. Usually, with the administrators and the officers that are in the building, we can staff often 4 or 5 ambulances during the daytime.
Hmm.
And then after 9 p.m. at night, we do drop down to 2 trucks. So there's 2 ambulances staffed on the overnight hours, and we supplement that with a paramedic in what we call a fly car, which is an SUV type vehicle that's a little bit more fleet of foot than an ambulance as far as getting to emergencies. So that unit is able to support our field staff, on the overnight hours. And can either manage a call if we're waiting for one of our crews to come from the hospital, or if we're waiting for one of our neighbors to come and assist us.
Okay. And excuse me. When do most of the calls occur? During the daylight hours or during the evening? It sounds like the way you're staffed, it would be mainly in the daylight hours.
Yeah, daytime hours, sort of our high volume period is generally from about 8 o'clock in the morning until sometime between 8 and 10 in the evening. Usually the overnight hours do slow down as far as volume, but we do tend to see higher acuity medical emergencies on the overnights, so it keeps everybody busy.
And I know you made a reference to this earlier, but perhaps you could explain what the importance of the fact that all the vehicles are equipped to provide advanced life support.
So, we chose to implement this model with paramedics versus there are a lot of agencies in the county that do staff some ambulances with just EMTs. So the crew will be two EMTs. Our system decided that the better way to deliver our care was to combine that with a paramedic. So every single one of our patients gets the benefit of a paramedic evaluation, gets the advantage of the availability of the paramedic skill set, if that's needed at any point in time. Oftentimes it's not, and the EMT is the person who takes over patient care and will bring that person to the hospital. But we felt it was important that we offer that service to all of our residents and not risk not having that capability available.
Okay, so advanced life support is not just about the equipment. It's about the fact that there's a paramedic involved with the equipment.
That's correct. So an EMT would be considered basic life support provider, and a paramedic or an advanced EMT, which is an intermediate between an EMT and a paramedic. Those would be consistent with providing advanced level care.
Okay. And how many calls do you handle a year?
We're busy. We're one of the busiest agencies in the county. Our little 911 system here last year did just over 6,500 calls for the year, which does include some of our public service events as well. But we're a very busy system, and we're pretty efficient with our delivery.
And what's your average response time?
That's probably one of the things we're most proud of. Our average response time for getting that ALS staffed ambulance to that patient is just about 5 minutes.
That's really quite remarkable. I know you're located on Ellendale Road, but there must be parts of the communities that are really more than a 5 minute drive away. So
There
you
are
guys are
there
really
some of the
moving.
farther reaching areas, the northern end of Rye Brook and sort of our southern end of Rye down towards the Mamaroneck border are some of the farther reaching areas. We do at times post ambulances out to get a little bit closer to those areas to try to narrow those response times down.
Okay. Now, do you also provide non-emergency services?
We do in a number of different ways. We do a lot of standbys for different community events. We do a lot of the sports and athletic standbys for all four of the high schools that are in our coverage area. We try to have a presence at most of the community events, Halloween in the park and Winter Wonderland and
Hmm.
all the different things that go on. We like to be there and like to support those events in case there's any kind of problem. But in addition to that, as far as our residents, we don't do non-emergency transportation, meaning taking somebody from home to a doctor's office or taking somebody from the hospital to home. But certainly, if any one of our residents is in need of something in a pinch, we will make every effort to solve that problem. So we'll often get calls. A family has arrived home and a loved one isn't able to get up a flight of stairs into the house from the driveway. And we're happy to go and help them in that situation. We have the equipment, we have the manpower, and so we will do that on an as needed basis.
Okay. Now, I've also noticed that when I see an EMS vehicle making a call, that it's almost always accompanied by a fire department equipment or police department equipment. Why is that?
So there's a couple different objectives with the police department. The way we are structured, everything, all of the 911 calls are dual response with the police department in each municipality. That all of the police officers have some basic medical training, CPR, AED, first aid, Narcan, and stop the bleed training. So they're a huge resource as far as getting to that patient. Often the police officers are on the road and in their vehicle when the call comes in. So they'll usually beat our 5 minute response time, often by a minute or two, which just narrows down that exposure for the person that's in need. So the police department is dual response. It's also a safety mechanism for the EMS providers that we have a law enforcement presence there. Some of the calls tend to be rather chaotic and at times can be risky or dangerous for the crew. So we have that support mechanism as well. And then with regard to the fire department, certain call types are going to be dual response with them. All of the highway responses, both medical and for motor vehicle accidents, are dual response with the fire department. That's largely a safety mechanism that's in place to protect our crew while they're operating in some of those more unsafe environments, especially in the highway. Um, but the fire departments also help us, if we need lifting assistance or carrying assistance or any kind of extrication process, whether it be somebody being removing someone from a car, or carrying someone out of the woods, or removing them from a balcony or anything like that. That's going to require rescue equipment and operation, which is a fire department function. So we try to work well with all of our co-service members.
Well, yes, it's interesting. You don't necessarily think of all the factors you mentioned about why you might need the various agencies responding to the same call. You explained it well, and I see the point. Now, you also provide emergency medical treatment instruction to various people in the community, various groups in the community. Could you go into that a little bit?
Certainly. Portchester Rye Brook EMS is an American Heart Association training center. So all of the American Heart Association disciplines we offer here. So the basic level CPR, AED training, bloodborne pathogens training for anyone in the healthcare field, and also the advanced courses, pediatric advanced life support and advanced cardiac life support are offered from the AHA. We also represent other training institutions. So we do stop the bleed instruction for hemorrhage control. We do Narcan training for both community members and for the other service professionals in the area. And one of the big ones is the camp requirements. So the wilderness first aid and advanced first aid, which are often requirements from New York State Department of Health for summer camp operation, are also classes that we offer. And all of that can be found on our website.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, you've touched some important factors, but it's actually a longer list of what organizations you help and what services you might offer individuals. So I'll just point out for everyone that the website is very informative. And the website is PCRRBEMS.com. And it contains all this type of information and how an individual citizen can take advantage of some of it. Let me also ask about Westchester County Airport. That I understand is something of a challenge for an EMS service because of its distance, the fact that you have longer than usual waiting times at the location, that it's not calls can be canceled when you get there, and uh, the people you're coming to assist may not have made the call and they decide to refuse the medical assistance. So that's a big challenge. How many of your calls go to the airport?
So, we do about 150 calls a year to the airport. It is a little bit of a unique arrangement, being that it is in the probably the farthest reaching part of our district. And it's a unique facility. It's a 24-hour operation that's happening there. You have inbound flights with medical emergencies. We are also the primary responder for the main terminal. And a lot of the parking structures and some of the other outside hangars are also in our main coverage area. So it is unique in how it's operated. There are some differences as far as waiting for an inbound plane that might be 30 to 45 minutes out when we're requested. So there may be sort of a delay in us being able to access the patient because they're not physically on the ground yet. It does consume a little bit of our resource availability, which could be problematic for our system. But we're certainly working with Westchester County to implement a solution to some of the concerns that exist there.
All right. Yeah, I noticed just as a quick calculation, it's about a little under 3% of your calls. And yet I suspect they're the ones that take up the most time.
They tend to be lengthier in duration just because of access. A lot of times the patients are on inbound flights, that are, oftentimes the plane is still in the air 20 to 30 minutes out from the airport when we're requested. And then there's the whole process of accessing the patient either on the plane or after the passengers disembark. So it is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, because I assume you have to go through all the security measures at the airport.
We get ushered in pretty quickly. Westchester County Police is pretty efficient about sort of recognizing who we are, what we're there for. They know that we've been requested for a specific problem, so they're pretty quick to get us to the area that we need to go to.
Oh, good. I I understand that the three municipalities fund about 25% of the EMS budget. What are the other sources of funding?
So we're a 501(c)(3), IRS not for profit. We're not in the business of trying to make money. As you said, John, 25% of our funding comes from the municipalities combined. The lion's share of our income comes from revenue recovery from billing insurance. So we will bill private insurance, we'll bill Medicare and Medicaid for the services that are rendered. And generally, whatever payment it comes out of that, we're certainly happy to accept. And then, I think the big thing as far as our billing stance is we don't look to create hardship. The primary objective of the agency is to provide timely and effective care to people when they're in their time of need. We are not looking to create an economic hardship for anyone. So if there's ever a problem with a balance on a bill or with a patient that might not have insurance that is sort of stuck with the full freight cost of an ambulance transport, which is not cheap these days, we don't take anyone to collections. If there's a hardship situation, we will work with the resident to navigate that problem.
That's very good to hear because I'm sure there are people who don't have any insurance coverage, yet you need the service.
Absolutely. And it's unpredictable. People can never predict when their 911 emergencies are going to happen. So
Right.
we need to get there and make sure that people are well and well taken care of, and the money shakes out sort of down the road. So in addition to our revenue recovery, we do an annual fund drive, generally just ahead of the holiday season in November. So we do get some support from our residences through that channel. And we do get grant monies here and again for different things.
Now, one of the questions is especially with the ending of the local newspaper. How do you contact people and let them know that you're raising funds from individuals, charitable donations, in effect? How do you do that? What's your way of contacting people or alerting them to this?
Yeah, we work with a fundraising entity that off of a mailing list for both the residential customers and the commercial businesses in the coverage area. So we work off of the mailing list. We send a solicitation letter And we hope to inspire our residents to support our mission.
Do you get a good response?
We do. We get a fair number. We get a roughly $70,000 annually. 75,000 dollars annually comes from the fund drive. These days it's not a huge percentage of the monies that we need to do our operation, but every penny is impactful. And we certainly try to stretch every last dollar towards our mission of supporting these communities.
Right. And what are the future plans for the EMS? Are there changes you have to adjust to? Is there size you need to get larger? What future plans are there?
So, sort of our long term is anticipating continued expansion of our system just based on the increase in volume that we're seeing over time. 6,500 calls last year was the most the agency's ever done. We expect to surpass that this year. There's a lot of development happening locally in our municipalities that's going to increase our resident numbers, which inherently is going to increase our call volume. So that's certainly on our radar. Um, our, our biggest one of our biggest focuses is going to be eventually finding us a new space. We've outgrown our current habitation at 417 Ellendale, and we're going to need to find some more square footage to work with. So that's going to be one of our biggest near-term objectives.
Right, and there's a tremendous building boom, especially downtown Portchester with apartments and whatnot. Are calls to apartments, uh, do they typically, once you get there, do they typically take more time because you have to get up through an elevator and things like that?
Yeah, I think the logistical element of accessing a person in an apartment versus a private home is, it is obviously different. There's minutes of time that are spent sort of entering and egressing from those locations, elevator access, working through a parking structure or anything like that. There's definitely logistical considerations that those calls do generally take a few minutes longer on average compared to our normal.
Right, right. Well, do you have any further comments? That if anything we haven't covered that you think the listeners might want to know?
I think we had touched on just a little bit on equipment earlier,
Right.
and I think it's important for people to understand how much this stuff costs. An ambulance, and believe me, we could certainly spend a lot more on an ambulance if we chose to. But the ambulances that we're operating currently, exceed $200,000 for just the vehicle purchase. Equipping these vehicles after the fact with the power stretchers and our stair chairs and our cardiac monitor, which is an extremely expensive piece of equipment. All of the ambulances and the fly cars also have a Lucas machine, which performs chest compressions during CPR. So, in addition to the cost of that vehicle, we have another $150,000 in hard expenses to equip that ambulance once it's in our possession. So, it's expensive. These things, the equipment is becoming more technologically advanced, and with that goes the price tag. So I think that's something very important for people to be aware of. The cardiac monitors that we're working with currently are $65,000 a piece, and there's
Hmm.
one of those in every vehicle. So you can see the impact. So I'd say that's one of the big things. One other thing I'd mention, John, is relative to our training. We embarked on an initiative with a group called Citizen CPR to achieve a Heart Safe Community designation back in 2023. We've been working steadily towards the goals to get that accreditation or designation, I should say, from Citizen CPR. We expect to actually hit our threshold this summer with our training program. So we've done thousands of individual trainings, CPR and AED, in different varieties to the members of our communities, which we feel is probably one of our most important initiatives, and that sort of dovetails with a pretty large community AED program that we're also managing. The village of Rye Brook has, for a number of years, has had AEDs in their parks. We're in the process of moving them outdoors to make them more accessible. We did a large deployment in the city of Rye last year to all of their park locations. And actually this spring, for the first time, we have three that we're now put out in a couple of the parks in Portchester. So, trying to narrow down people's exposure to a cardiac arrest, get more hands on deck as far as people being trained and knowledgeable and how to address those situations, and making these AEDs available are really important objectives that we're trying to achieve for the community. So I'd say that's the other big thing I'd like to make people aware of.
Yeah, and I have the idea that if a person is going to coach a youth sports team, they need to take the emergency medical training to some degree and be able to operate the AED if need be.
That's correct. So it was a couple citizens from Rye Brook who actually championed the
Right.
legislative initiative that got this through the New York State Legislature in January of 2023, that requires all youth sports of a certain size in New York State to have trained and equipped coaches that are able to respond to these emergencies. So that was a huge step as far as really elevating the agenda for heart health and cardiac arrest awareness, which is something that was lacking.
Oh, okay. That's you provide so many very important services to the communities you serve. It's really and it seems to be a very well organized organization. So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us today. And we hope to have you on in the future, perhaps after you've bought new equipment.
Sounds like a plan. I
All
thank you for
right.
your time, John. It was a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you.
All right. Thank you, Kenny.